self that's accountable anymore. You're not really anything at all but listening. You're more of a channel for the flow of the higher that you've been seeking. You're really giving yourself up to the outside, so that the outside may always speak to you in the silence of your listening. So if you're always listening and saying, how do I see this? How do I see this? And you get eventually a process of ideas coming from your conscience, your conscience, your guiding knowledge. That guiding knowledge, that conscience, is speaking to you all the time. And sometimes you hear it and you react to it, to your conscience. But you're either listening to your conscience or you're listening to your ego. Right? You can't serve two masters. You'll be split if you try to. So what I'm saying here is that you have to start to listen always for your conscience. And if you're always listening for your conscience, then when things don't go well or people don't seem to react very well, there's no personal ownership, because you're just being and giving purely as an unselfish flow. And if they don't like it, well, okay, that's a shame they don't like it, you know. But there isn't a you that's got to defend anything.
No. Was it Jiminy Cricket?
Jiminy Cricket.
Let your conscience be a guide.
Give a little whistle and always let your conscience be your guide. And that's what we're talking about. So your conscience is the outer, but it isn't really the outer, because that's part of your delusion as a result of living in a world of separateness and separate things, a so-called physical world. There isn't really an inner and an outer. That's the delusion. So really, your conscience is always ever present with you, because your conscience is the real you. It's the you that you really are, but you don't remember or know because you've been dallying with your ego all the time. You've been hanging around with a non-you, a little defensive you, a little conniving and a planning and trying to do it myself you, right? And that has a little sign on the door as you're busy and working with your plotting and your planning, and it says, do not enter here. No room for conscience, thank you very much. Right? And conscience is going, no, go away. No, go away. Oh my God, I'm desperate. I don't know what I'm going to do. I know, the bombs are dropping everywhere and I'm in this foxhole. I know, I'll turn to God. Help! Oh, I got through that, all right. Right, sign on the door, right, back to my plans.
It starts all over again.
How can you be sure your conscience, you know, for instance, that's all I can think of at the moment, I'm afraid.
How can you be sure a friend is a friend?
Yeah, well...
How?
You just know.
You get to know them, you spend time with them. And that's how you grow, by inviting your conscience in and getting to know its voice.
I mean, if you were a Christian, you might be thinking, I ought to have gone to church, I ought to have gone to Mass.
I am a Christian.
Well, people who go... Do you go to church?
No.
Well, people who do go...
Or Mass.
Okay. People who do
I don't think Jesus did he?
I don't think so.
Well, listen,
No, he went to the synagogue.
I don't think he did actually go to the synagogue.
He did?
Yes, he did.
He did occasionally.
That's where all the trouble started.
Yeah. And when he was found there as a child, he was sort of
As an
told
adult-
off.
As an adult, he went to the synagogue to read from the law, and they were all... certain people were
Trading.
aghast or something at his knowledge and so on. But
They were offended.
well, it does say in one point, you know, that they were...
Offended?
Well, I can't recall it all sufficiently, but I thought there was a part where he first goes to the synagogue and reads, where people are simply impressed with him. Not just as a child when he was 12, I thought he did. But I'm just saying that your conscience can be according to, if you were moving through, for instance, you now think it's not necessary to go to church, and
No, I didn't say that. You asked me if I go to church
You said
or go to
no.
maths, and I said no. I didn't
Yeah.
say anything or judgmental about what others should do, and I'm not even
But
sure
you
that
said
I
you said-
should or shouldn't. What am I saying that I do?
You said you don't.
What am I saying that I do and I'm encouraging you lot to do?
Leaving God.
To listen for conscience. And where do you find it?
Inside.
Always now inside you, right? So I don't prejudge conscience. I sometimes do go to church. I went to a play at church a few weeks ago that my sister's brother put on. My wife goes to church quite regularly to look after the kids there, and if my conscience says this morning you'll go to church, I'll go. I'm not bound by any.
Well, I was only using
Constraint.
that as an example.
That's a good example. Gave me a
Some
chance
people, Yes.
let you
For
know.
instance, my friend Frances, if she comes over to see me, she's got to get back on a Sunday to go to Mass. She's got to go on a 4 o'clock train or bus to go to Mass that day. It must be her conscience that makes her feel that if she doesn't go to Mass, she's going to feel she's offended God or something.
Well, you'd have to
Well, as
ask her.
Catholics,
Well,
we're
yes,
told
yes.
not to go every Sunday.
Yes.
I don't, because I don't feel it's necessary.
No, but all I'm trying to say is you can't always trust your conscience, can you?
Me?
One.
You?
Which one?
No.
You saying?
I can't.
Well, let me just forget. You're saying you can't
I
always
can't
touch me.
trust my
Why?
conscience.
Have you had a good relationship with your conscience?
I know that my conscience would tell me to do, taking the same example, the same thing. My conscience could tell me at one time in my life to do so and so, and then later on in my life I don't think that's right, and then later on I might have gone back to thinking it was right.
Well, let's just be very clear. In terms of what I mean by conscience, I mean the mind that is you, your real mind, that is not overlain by ego. Right? So in other words, in order to be sure that you have a relationship with your conscience, you have to go on the quest for it. And in order to go on the quest for it, you have to see all of that which is in the way of it. So you have to do the journey of self-awareness and self-knowing. So you have to get to know all of the bits and pieces of your ego and that which is operative in your subconscious mind that drives ego. So you have to get to know your fears intimately and not deny them or avoid them. You have to look at them in the face until they shrink and disappear. So that the picture here is in the mind. I was starting to mention it before. It's like if you see this on the wall, this monster in your room as a child, and it's like the shadow of this monster, and it's huge and frightening. But if you actually decide to have the curiosity to not sort of run away in your mind, and it just grows, and you dream, and you have nightmares, if you actually think, well, let's have a look, where's that? Well, how's that getting there? Let's have a look at where it emanates from, and you look beyond the candle to find there's a little tiny field mice on the shelf. With little tiny lovely eyes.
Worse than a big monster.
And also, actually, if you dream, this is something that's quite important, if you dream of fearful things, if you can get into the state of mind where you actually look at the fearful things, and you become mindful and step back, then the fearful things can no longer frighten you or chase you when you face them, and you confront them. So the journey towards knowing what your conscience does or does not do requires you being quite sure that you have one. And you won't be quite sure that you have one until you start to be in a good relationship with it as a friend, because you're not really sure that you have a friend until you get to know that friend over many years. So conscience is something that takes time for you to be sure of your relationship with before you're able to assess what it can and cannot do for you. And in fact, I will actually say this, that your conscience ultimately is inevitably